Ready?
Let's do it, Cronkite.
Superman.
Miss Lane.
David, my first question is for you because I'm a big old nerd for acting training and techniques. And I love the fact that both you and Christopher Reeve studied at Juilliard.
Juilliard,
So
yes, there it is.
We're taking shots every time somebody mentions Juilliard or Star Wars.
what do you think it is about that style of training that tees actors up so especially well to crush it as Superman?
I was astonished. I did not expect it at the screen test to feel multiple times that my training at Juilliard had perfectly prepared me for the screen test specifically and then the role in general. I think there's a lot at acting school that's really cool and fun, but you sort of think once you're out in the world, you're not going to use a lot. It's sort of like, high school trigonometry. You're like, am I really going to use this? But then you have to, when do you use trigonometry in real life? I don't know. You do. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but pay attention in school, kids. Love trigonometry. Okay. Anyway, sorry. So the first of all was the screen test for Superman was this sort of old-fashioned screen test where we actually did the scene and shot the scene as though it were a scene. Whereas most screen tests are more like auditions where there's one camera and you do it once or twice, maybe get a note, and it all feels kind of over too quick and much more like an audition. James immediately made working on the screen test scene feel like we were going to work, not like we were auditioning. And the work felt much more like rehearsing a play than it did like shooting a movie. So I immediately thought, well, that's what I trained for, rehearsing a play. I did a lot of that in school. Then when we got up on wires for the stunt evaluation, something I had never done before, but the challenge there was all about sort of having isometric control over your body and your limbs.
Good word.
While keeping a sort of a relaxed and hopefully somewhat charming facial expression, although not always, sometimes, not necessary or counterproductive. And so again, I thought back to Moni Akim's movement classes at Juilliard, where you'd be lying on the floor and he would say, I'm not going to do it with my legs this time. And he would say, and the right leg up and down.
Come on.
And up and down.
Juilliard, ladies and gentlemen.
And for an hour and a half, you're going like this, I feel like I'm about to die. And what does this have to do with acting? Of course, it has everything to do with acting, but that was so directly translatable. I did think, did Christopher Reeve think back to training with Moni, which he did. He did train with Moni at school. I was amazed at how directly translatable it all felt. So thanks, Juilliard.
Trigonometry and isometric.
Yeah.
I'm using lots of big words today now. Rachel, I wanted to ask you about a backstory question because there's a part in our press notes where James mentions, I think Lois has a much more tumultuous past than Superman. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about some backstory you came up with off screen that we could feel informing your performance and perhaps speaking to why she doesn't believe in goodness the same way that he does?
There's a couple different versions of Lois's backstory that James and I talked about and explored. Some things that I added for color, but James liked the version where her father is a military general, and that she was raised in an environment that taught her to work hard and to rise to the occasion, but also to be skeptical, to question everything, and that perhaps she hadn't necessarily been modeled the same kind of family structure as Clark grew up with Ma and Pa Kent, and some other stuff along the way that
you don't get to know about.
That we get to hold on to. But Lois talks a little bit about being punk rock for a period of her life, and I tend to find that people who end up having a punk rock phase arrive there with purpose. And so speaking as somebody who had a little bit of one myself, and I appreciated that James, even though the moments don't necessarily take up that much real estate, that backstory is a really important part of how we arrived here, and especially a part of her arc in the film. We understand her skepticism. We understand her priding herself on being 10 steps ahead of everyone else. It makes her good at her job. But I also think a part of her just doesn't believe this part of Superman that actually sees the goodness in people first. And it's really not until she gets to see him at home, briefly, that I think she has that realization, which is a really crucial moment for her as a character.
Crucial moment. Another crucial moment that happens earlier in the movie that I absolutely love is that first, like, really meaty conversation the two of you have to get, like, really lengthy dialogue-driven scene.
As it goes on and on and on.
It's something else. I especially appreciate seeing two characters have a conversation on the big screen in this type of film where they have fundamentally different opinions about how to tackle something, and it's not something that ruins their relationship. So can you tell me maybe something about the two of them that allows that kind of conversation to, I guess, build them up and not tear them apart?
They're both really passionate characters, and they will die on the hills they're going to die on. I think it's part of what, you know, they're like a magnet. I think they are stronger together. They kind of need each other to bring out each other's humanity. And they're hot for each other. You know, I think it keeps things exciting. These are two people who have met their match in each other in a way that they don't experience very often in their lives.
It was a big risk for James to write such a long scene, which is essentially an argument, because I think argument scenes,
a passionate conversation,
they run the risk of having two characters explaining their opinions to each other, arguing their opinions. What was great about the writing of the scene, which made it really fun to play and a great first scene to shoot between the two of us, was that not only do we have different opinions or we're on different sides of the argument, but our perspectives on the argument are directly linked to how we argue. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just we have different opinions. We have different styles of having this argument, and we have different expectations of the other character in their responses. So that creates layers. And then, of course, under all of those layers is the fact that at least one of us just wanted to sleep with the other one, and then we ended up having this.
I think we both started there.
Good, that's what I thought. You know. But then, obviously,
took a little bit of a different direction.
I will say, I like calling it an argument, but it's a healthy argument, and I feel like we need more examples of that on the big screen. Congratulations.
Perri, we can do it all day.